welcome back to Beyond Recovery, everybody. My name is Matt. My guest today is Tim LODGEN, and he is an addiction awareness advocate, former MMA fighter, veteran, fitness guru, and he's sober, and he's crushing it. He's my guest today. Tim, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, dude. I've been looking forward to this interview because I've been watching you on Instagram. You got a really cool doing some documentation. You actually got a like a fitness show coming up. So tell us a little bit about it. You got something coming up in November. Share with the audience, please.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of funny. I usually start my story saying I grew up in a normal family, but to be honest with you, my mom was a professional bodybuilder when I was growing up as a child.
No way.
Yeah, so I got to grow up seeing her doing all these competitions and get in really good shape. And my uncle was Mr. Universe 3 years in a row.
Wow.
And my cousin, which is my uncle's son, he was Mr. Maryland here in Maryland, where I live a couple of years. He was a professional bodybuilder for about 10, 12 years. So I grew up around it my entire life. My aunt, my whole father's family's from Germany. My aunt, who could barely speak English, she actually for 35 years, she hand sewed all the bodybuilding swimsuits for everybody around the world. So when I would go stay with my father, my father and mother got a divorce. He lived upstairs in my aunt's house. When I would go visit my father for the weekend, I'd walk into like professional bodybuilders getting measured and ready. My aunt did all the suits for the Chippendale dancers. So
Wow.
I'd walk in and see all these really fit, big, buff guys, and I always wanted to do it. Like something
Cool.
a part of me, just being a young kid, seeing all these guys with all these muscles, it always intrigued me.
Yeah.
And I was always in shape. I mean, I played a lot of sports. I took care of myself, but not to that extent because alcohol and drugs always got in my way. I never had the focus and the determination and the consistency to do it. Now that I have 18 months clean and sober, I got that on Monday.
Hell yeah.
Um, when I was in rehab, I told myself, you know what, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it mentally, spiritually, and physically. And I started working out with a personal trainer in rehab Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. And I changed my diet completely in rehab. And I've stuck with it. And here it is 18 months later, and I'm getting ready for my first show in November.
Dude.
Um, I did a Muscle and Fitness magazine cover competition that ended in March, and it had 10,000 applicants, and the first place was cover of Muscle and Fitness. You get a 2-page spread inside, and you win $25,000.
Wow.
And I came in third place.
Wow, dude. That is amazing.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I was kind of upset. I was kind of sad. But
Yeah.
to put it in perspective, my mom called me and she said, "How you doing?" I said, "Oh man, I'm kind of bummed out. I didn't win." She said, "Are you kidding me right now?" I was like, "Yeah. What do you mean?" She's like, "Tim, from where you were to come in third place in an international competition." She's like, "Son, you won. You
Mm.
won. I'm so proud of you. You have to look at it. How many people wish they could have even gotten to that competition, much less come in third
Third.
place?"
Yeah.
She's like, "Honey, I'm so proud of you. And in my eyes, you're a winner." And as soon as I hung up that phone, my perspective on it, I was like, wow, I got caught up in winning the money and being on the cover.
Sure.
But
Sure.
man, what an accomplishment that was for me. So after I hung up
Dude.
the phone, I was like, you know what? I'm proud of myself. That is huge.
That is huge, man. That's what a crazy story. Yeah, the whole thing. I love how you're like it's almost in a sense born to do this, right? It's like Yeah, you were on your own path to get there, and we'll get into that. You mentioned what was getting in your way, and that's one of the reasons you're on this the interview today is to talk about that and share that story of recovery and redemption and everything. But dude, great place to start. And I wish you all the best that in November, and anybody that isn't following you, we're gonna have your IG in the show notes. Totally, just to watch your journey as you go into this. So congrats on all you've accomplished so far, but before we go into that, I really want to hear your story. It sounds like you've had quite the life. And let's go back to just, rolling back the clock right back to as far as your origins was with your relationship with alcohol, and how you got yourself out of that. And just, yeah, give us some of the high points or low points, as it were, about your story, please.
Yeah, I'm gonna start with when my father left, because it did affect me, and it did I did use that sometimes to drink and drug. At the age of 7, my mother and father got a divorce, and as a young boy, I thought it was my fault. Um, I have a brother who's 11 years older than me. So to me, I was like, why did my dad leave when I was in first grade, but he stuck around until my brother was almost a senior in high school? What did I do? Did I not listen enough? Did I not clean my room? Was I not a good boy? And then when he left, he would call my mom and say, hey, I'm coming to pick him up for this weekend. Have him ready. Have him waiting at the door. And my mom would pack my stuff, and I'd wait at the front door, and an hour would go by, sometimes 2, and I'd still be sitting on the front steps waiting. And when he would call and say, something came up, I can't come and get you this weekend. I'll come next weekend. Next weekend would come, he wouldn't show up. It happened so much that when my mom said my dad was coming, I told her, don't even pack the bags. I'm not even wasting my time anymore. And that affected me. I was, why didn't my dad love me? I need a father figure in my life. That's the way I felt. But I will say my mom did a hell of a job raising me. After my dad left, that woman, she got 3 jobs, put herself through college, got a master's degree, and ultimately ended up becoming a vice president of this huge company here in Maryland. And she did very, very well for herself. And to keep me occupied, she put me in sports. I played baseball all through elementary up until middle school, and then I played football for a couple of years. And during the time playing football, I also was an amateur skateboarder here in Maryland. I was sponsored by a couple local skate shops. I actually grew up with Brandon Novak from Jackass and Viva La Bam.
Wow.
And we skateboarded all together. And through him, I was able to skate with Bucky Lassick a couple times, because Bucky actually lived here in Maryland too. But Brandon
Wow.
knew him. So when I skated with Brandon, he'd be like, oh, Bucky's coming to skate with us. So it was kind of like a really cool highlight to be able to skate with him a couple times. But yeah, me and Brandon grew up together, and we skated a lot. And I skated, I was very good. I still didn't do drugs and alcohol. I got in the 9th grade, and I started on the local boxing team here in Maryland, and I became a Golden Glove boxer and a junior Olympic boxer. I came in 3rd place in the Junior Olympics. Still no drugs and alcohol. I get into 9th grade of high school, and there was a welcome to high school freshman party,
Uh,
and I decided to go, and that was the first time I ever tried alcohol. And to be honest with you, I didn't like it. I got extremely sick. My mother came and picked me up the next day, and she was like, you drank alcohol last night, didn't you? And I said, yeah. And she's like, well, I'm not going to punish you, because you're going to be sick the entire day. The rest of your weekend's ruined. But we are having a cookout today, and I need 50 ears of corn shucked. So what you're going to do is you're going to go in the basement. You're going to shuck all 50 ears of those corn. Here's a bag for the corn, and here's a bag for you to get sick. But I'm not going to punish you. That's your punishment. So I ended up shucking ears of corn and throwing up all damn day. I didn't touch alcohol again, and no drugs. And senior year. So senior year comes around, and I didn't have good enough grades getting to college, and a lot of my friends were starting to mess around and getting in trouble. And I was like, I just don't want to do that. So the summer before our senior year, I joined the United States Marine Corps. So I knew once I graduated, I was going into boot camp. So senior year, I was kind of like, you know what? I'm going to go to some parties and have some fun.
mm,
And I went to some parties, and I wasn't going to parties to be popular and have friends. I had a lot of friends in high school. I was one of the most popular kids in high school. So it wasn't to fit in or be liked. I just figured I was going to blow off some steam this year, because at the end of the year, shit's going to hit the fan. I'm going in the military.
mm.
So I started going to parties and started drinking. And once I started drinking, I was the guy that was, what else is at the party?
Mm.
And I started smoking pot, which really isn't that big of a deal, but I started smoking pot. Then I started doing LSD, and then I started doing mushrooms, and I started doing painkillers, and then I actually started doing some PCP. And I was just dabbling around a little bit of everything. Thank God cocaine and heroin was not around my area at the time. I probably would have tried that as well. But it all stemmed with me getting that alcohol in my system. Once I got the alcohol in my system, I did the effort thing. I was like, I don't care what else is here. Let's have some fun. Again, I thought it was just a phase. Let it get out of my system. I'm going in the military. Well, I graduate high school and I get into the military. Graduate boot camp, and the drugs did stop. As soon as I got in the military, there was drug testing. The drugs were completely gone. But once I graduated boot camp and I got stationed in North Carolina, when we got done at 4 o'clock, we left the base and we went to the bars and we went to the strip clubs. We're 18,
Mm.
19, and 20-year-old kids. And you go to the bars outside of the military bases, and their mottos were, if you're old enough to take a bullet for this country, you're old enough to have a cold beer.
Yeah.
So they would serve us, and their only rule was you couldn't stand there holding a beer in your hand in case the authorities walked into the establishment. But they would serve you all, so you could drink your beer and just have to sit it down at a table. And then
Yeah.
when you wanted another one, you go up to the bar and they give it to you, and you have to go sit it back down at the table. And they would serve you all night long. And as 18, 19, 20-year-old men, we're seeing our sergeants at the same damn bar drinking. And these guys are late 20s, early 30s, and they would just tell us, make sure you're up at 4 a.m. We don't care how long you stay out. Make sure your ass is up. Make sure you're ready to go run 4 miles, and make
Mm.
sure you're able to do your what needs to be done the next day. So there really was no deterrent as young men to not drink. The
Right.
rule the rule was don't get arrested and be on time at 4 a.m.
Sure.
Other than that, they didn't care if we were drinking. So and that lasted the entire time I was in the Marine Corps. Our unit got stationed, or not stationed, got deployed over to Somalia for 6 months. Now it wasn't during wartime, so I'm not a combat veteran, but we went over there for training purposes. And while I was there, I saw the ramifications of what war did to a country and the
Mm.
people and what was around it. And I didn't think it affected me. But when I came home and I only had about 3 months left in my enlistment, and I get out and I come home, the first month was actually kind of cool. I was like, man, I don't have to get up at 4 o'clock. I don't have to go running. I don't have to shave every day. I don't have to get a haircut once a week. It was kind of like a decompression, like, moment.
Mm.
The second month came, and I kind of got the oh shit factor. Man, I got to get a job. I got to
Mm.
start paying rent. I'm back at my mom's house. I got to get a vehicle. I got to start taking care of myself. I'm not in the military anymore. You know,
Mm.
room and board isn't free. Food isn't free. I got to start taking care of myself. The third month came, and I fell into a deep, deep depression.
Mm.
I didn't leave my room. I wasn't shaving. I wasn't showering. I was still drinking every single day, and now I'm smoking pot and doing LSD and painkillers again because now I'm not getting drug tested. I fell right back into what I was doing before I went into the military. And I'm home one day, and I'm really putting it on myself. Man, I'm a piece of crap. What the hell did I do to myself? Why did I let myself fall back into this? And I don't know my purpose. I don't know why. What's next for me. And I go into my stepfather's armoire and I grab his gun and I sit it on my lap. And I'm sitting there looking at it and I'm crying and I don't know what I'm doing. And I call my girlfriend at the time and I say, hey, I'm not in a good place. I'm sitting here with his gun on my lap and I'm looking at it and I don't know what I'm doing. And she hung up the phone and came right over. She took the gun from me and put it back. And when my mom came home from work that evening, I told her, I said, hey, something's not right. I'm extremely depressed. I'm not right in the head. I didn't tell her I had my stepdad's gun in my lap. She would have freaked out and had me committed to a hospital. But what she did do is she made appointments for me to go to the doctors. When I went to the doctors, they got me in there. They ran a bunch of tests. I took a bunch of I had to answer all these questions, and they came back and they diagnosed me with bipolar 1 disorder, manic depressive. Their first solution was therapy and meds. So they immediately put me on these medicines. Now, I'm saying this because I want people to understand that if you go to the doctor and they diagnose you with some type of mental illness and they're prescribing you medicines, please be honest with your doctors. If you're drinking or using drugs, you must tell your doctors. I wasn't honest. So when I went back every 30 or 60 days to do a reevaluation for them to ask me, hey, is this medicine working? I would just be like, no, it's not working. I don't know what's going on. It's not working. Okay, well, maybe the milligrams are too low. Let's up your milligrams. Go back in another 30, 60 days. How you feeling? Well, I don't know. I'm feeling loopy. I'm out of it. I'm still depressed. Okay, well, maybe those medicines aren't working. We'll put you on these medicines instead, and we'll change the milligrams. That on and off of milligrams and medicines lasted from the time I was 21 until 44, the day going into rehab.
Wow.
And that is all because I was never honest with my doctors. I never told them I was drinking every day and using multiple different types of drugs. So it didn't matter what medicines or milligrams that they put me on, none of it was going to work. Those medicines are not designed to work with alcohol and drugs in your system. But I wasn't going to admit that. I wasn't going to say, oh, it's got to be the alcohol and the drugs. It's just the medicine. The medicine's not working. You just haven't found the right cocktail that works for me.
Of course.
It wasn't until I got into rehab that I really figured it out. Holy shit, this whole time it was my fault. I wasn't honest. I was drinking and drugging every day. So that went on from 20 all the way to my 40 till 41. But during this time, I met my wife. I actually went to high school with her, so I already knew her. When I came back from the Marines, I saw her at a party. We got together, and we've been together ever since 1996, actually.
Nice.
And we got together. We moved in. We got a house. We had our first daughter at age 23. I had a job. I was paying bills. I guess I was functional at that time because I was paying my bills. I had a vehicle, and we were taking care of my daughter. I look back at it now and realize I don't think I was as functional as I thought because I would lose jobs every 6 to 9 months. I couldn't keep a job up to a year. And every time I would lose a job, I'd just go get another one. Or I'd get sick and not go back. Or I'd just quit and just, I'm not going back there. That place sucks, and just not go. Since the age of 21, up until maybe 38, 39, I had 46 jobs. And that is all due to my bipolar and my drug and alcohol addiction combination. So we got into my 30s, and we had our second daughter, and I just lost another job. And my wife's like, what's going on? You can't keep a job. We have 2 children now. What are we going to do? And I literally told her, I don't want to work right now. I just don't. I don't have the desire to work. She's like, what do you want to do? And I said, I really miss sports. I really miss doing something. I'm like, I'm not getting any younger. I really want to try some sports. And she's like, what? And I said, I miss fighting. I said, I think I'm going to go try MMA. And she looks at me and she says, I'll tell you what, you're collecting unemployment, our bills are paid. You have 1 year. You take 1 year off and go training and see if you can get some fights, see if you can make some money and make something of this. But after 1 year, if nothing's happening, you've got to let it go and you've got to go get a job. Like, that's it. So I go to the local mixed martial arts gym down here in Baltimore, and I start training. And within 6 months, I had my first fight. That 1 year ended up lasting 3 years. I ended up fighting every 30, sometimes 90 days. It just depends. When you have a professional fight, no matter what happens in the fight, if you don't get knocked out, you don't get cut, the local state that you're living in suspends you for 30 days. It's kind of like Yeah, they give you 30 days off kind of, and after 30 days, you got to go back to the doctor. You got to do some memory exercise. You got to get a physical. You got to do the whole thing again. And as long as you pass everything, they reinstate your license, and you can get back on. Now, if you get knocked out, it's an automatic 6 month suspension. You have to take six
Wow.
months off.
Okay.
That way, your brain heals, and you
Yeah.
go to the proper doctors and make sure everything's okay. And then after that 6 months, you're allowed to fight again because your license actually lasts 5 years. So once you go down to the local state athletic commission, they give you a license, and it's for a 5 year long. So you have 5 years to fight until your license expires.
Right.
So I ended up doing it for 3 years. Ended up having 8 fights, and I wasn't making that much money. I mean, it was all local shows. The coolest show I fought was at Harris Casino in Atlantic City, and it was televised, and it was in front of
Cool.
like 3,000 people. But I
Nice.
wasn't making much money. I was making like $1,500 a fight. It was
Mm.
kind of more of a hobby, but I was bringing home money, and I was paying the electric and food and stuff like that. So she kind of just let it slid. But my last fight, I tore my rotator cuff,
Oof.
and I ended up tearing it in 3 places. And
Oh.
I get back to the locker room, and I'm putting my shirt on, and I can't lift my right arm.
Yeah.
And my trainer's like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "Man, I did something to my arm. I can't lift my arm." And he's like, "Okay." He helped me put my shirt on, and I go out into the casino, and I got like 30 friends and family there. And my wife comes up and she hands me a beer, and I grab it with my left hand. Now, even though I'm left-handed, I write and draw with my left hand. I'm dominant with my right. I actually use both of them, and I grab it with my left. And she's like, she kind of noticed it right off the bat. How come you're not holding it with your right hand? I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, I can't lift my arm. And she's like, you're done. She's like, that's it. You're 35. You had 3 years. That's it. She's like, we got to go to the doctors and see what's going on. So I go to the doctors the next couple of days, and he confirms that you tore your labrum in 3 different places. You have to have surgery.
Oof.
So I have to have surgery at age 35, and that starts a 4 year long opioid dependency prescribed by my doctor.
Man.
And on top of this, I'm drinking 6 to 12 beers a day, and now I'm getting painkillers from my doctor every 30 to 60 days, depending on how he refills my bottle. And it started off with hydrocodones, and I would go back after 30 or 60 days, and he'd say, "How you doing?" And I would be like, the hydrocodones aren't really doing it for me, you know. Okay, well, we'll give you some Percocets. You know, they have a little bit more kick than the hydrocodones. I go back every 30, 60 days, and how they doing? And they actually messed my stomach up a little bit. You know, they're a little bit harsh on my stomach. Okay, well, you know what? We're just going to stop messing around. We're just going to give you Oxycontins. Okay. So he puts me on Oxycontins, and that's what I stay on for 3 years is Oxys, 20 milligram Oxys. And like every good addict, I wasn't taking them one every 4 hours or one every 6 hours, or whatever that bottle said.
Right.
I was taking 2 to 3 to 4 every 4 to 6 hours. And I was running through my prescription halfway through
Mm.
before I had it refilled. So I'd have to end up calling my friends, "Hey, can you hook me up for 2 weeks until the doctor fills my script?" And I'd
Yeah.
go out to the streets and get it. Now, mind you, this whole time I'm taking 8 to 10 hydrocodones, and I'm drinking 12 to 18 beers a day.
Whew. Yeah.
And I got to a point where I got scared. I really got scared, and I'm telling myself, man, this is how people die. I'm gonna take these oxycontins tonight. I'm gonna drink my beer, and there's a possibility that I don't wake up tomorrow.
Mm.
And I'm like, man, screw it. If I'm gonna die, I'm gonna do it myself. And I reach over and I grab my bottle of oxycontins, and I dump it out on my hand, and I have 18 of them left in the bottle. And I take all 18 of them,
Man.
and I go into the living room, and I sit down and I guzzle a 12 pack of beer within like an hour. I just straight throw them back. And I get up and I go into the bed, and I lay in my bedroom, and I say, God, please don't let me wake up, because I want the pain to stop. I don't know how to stop, and I can't live this way. and I pass out, and I wake up the next day like 16 hours later. And I remember getting up and going into the bathroom and seeing my refill in the cabinet. And I open it up and I pour all 30 of them down the toilet and I flush the toilet. And I look myself in the mirror and I say, I don't care how bad this gets. I'm never taking pain medicine again. And for the next 10 days, I was probably the sickest I think I've ever been in my entire life. The full gambit of coming off of opioids, the throwing up, the jitters, the insomnia, the sweats, the going to the bathroom, the racing thoughts, uh, eat, nausea, headaches. I mean, the whole spectrum of coming off of opioids. But every single day when I woke up, I would look myself in the mirror and I'd say, don't forget how this feels. We're never going through this again. And that was the last time I've ever taken pain medicine. And it's been, I'm 46 now, so it's been about 8 years since I've touched pain medicines. I was able to stop that myself. But when I stopped the opioids, my alcohol went through the roof. I couldn't stop drinking because now I'm missing a part of my cocktail. I'm used to drinking my 12 beers, taking my pain pills, and smoking about a quarter of weed a day. Well, now my pain pills are missing. And I remember sitting on my bed and I'm like, man, why can't I stop drinking? What the hell is out there for me? What's my purpose? I'm so lost. If I could stop pain pills, why can't I stop drinking? And I'm like, screw it, I'm going for a ride. And I get in my truck and I go for a ride down by this beautiful park we have here in Maryland. And I'm driving through the park and I get to this tree where my senior year of high school, my best friend lost control of his vehicle and hit the tree at the age of 18 and lost his life. And at this tree, his parents have set up a little memorial. They have a picture of him hanging on the tree, and they have a book that they put there, December 27th, 1996, and the book is still there. They change it out once a year, and people can still go up to the tree and write to him. And I get out of my tree. This is March 16th, 2017. And I get out and I go up to the tree and I'm like, Bill, I'm lost, man. I don't know why I'm here. I can't stop drinking. I just need a sign that there's something out there, man. Because I didn't believe in anything at this point. I had no faith in whatsoever. I didn't know if there was a God or what, if there were spirits. I didn't know. I was so lost. I'm like, can you please just give me a sign that there's something else out there? Because I truly don't know what my purpose is. And I don't know why I'm here. And I go to leave the park. And as I'm leaving, I'm crying. I'm like, I'm just out of it. I'm crying. And I go to pull over and park my vehicle. But going out on the right hand side, I didn't park. I pulled over on the left hand side facing oncoming traffic. And I park, and about 10 minutes goes by, and this car pulls up, and we're hood to hood now because I'm on the opposite side of the road. And I see this man, he's getting out of his vehicle and he opens up his back door and he pulls his dog out. He's about to go walk across the street where the water is and go walk his dog. And I'm watching this man get out and I'm looking at him and I'm like, man, he looks familiar, man, he looks familiar. And all of a sudden it dawns on me. It was my best friend who died in 1996. It was his father. And I haven't seen him since the day of my best friend's funeral, 1996. And here it is, March 16th, 2017, 21 years later. And I get out of my vehicle and I look at him and I say, Mr. Bill? And he looks at me. He's like, Timmy, is that you? And I say, yeah. And I fall to the curb and I start crying. And he walks over to me and said, what's wrong? I said, I'm an alcoholic. I'm an addict. I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know why I'm here. And he walks over to him and he puts his hand on my shoulder and he says, Timmy, I'm not supposed to be here this morning. I'm supposed to be in South Carolina at a family reunion trip. My wife came to me in a dream last night and told me to come here this morning at 10 a.m. to walk the dog. I believe I was here to see you. And I said, Mr. Bill, I just stopped at Billy's tree. I asked him to give me a sign that there was something else out there, that there was something watching over me. And we hugged. And he told me everything is going to be okay. There is something over us. Our loved one are watching over us. You're going to be fine. And as I leave the park, I have about a 10-minute period where I'm feeling inspired that somebody's watching over me, that everything is going to be okay. And then all of a sudden, my mental illness and my addiction kick in. And they say, you know what? You are going to be okay. Everything is going to be fine. You don't have to stop drinking because you're being protected. You can
Mm.
continue to live your life the way that you need to because everything is going to be okay because
Wow.
somebody's watching over you. So for the next 4 years, from March 16th, 2017 until March 5th, 2021, almost 4 years to the day,
Yeah.
I drank the most alcohol I've ever drank in my life. The beer wasn't enough for me. It just wasn't. I was drinking like Killian's and Miller Lite and Michelob and all that stuff. I switched to the lagers and the IPAs and like the fancy beers, the 10, 11% beers. And I was still drinking 12 of them, sometimes 18 of those a day. And I was like, you know what? This isn't doing it for me. I'm feeling bloated and fat. I'm going to switch to whiskey because, I'll be able to handle whiskey better. So I completely stopped drinking beer and started drinking Fireball whiskey. And again, it's funny how your addiction kind of plays tricks on you. My addiction tells me not to buy a big bottle of whiskey because then I'll really know exactly how much liquor I'm drinking a day.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
but buy the miniatures because you can drink them and throw them out the window or throw them in the trash, and you'll kind of
Yeah.
forget how much you're drinking a day. And also I could hide them. I could put them in my sock drawer, and
Sure.
my wife won't know exactly how much I'm drinking. So it started off with just me kind of mustering it in. I would buy 5 or 6 and still get a 6 pack, and then the 5 or 6 went to 8 or 10, and then eventually the beer left. And I would stop at the liquor store in the morning at 7 a.m. and get a sleeve of Fireball, which is 10 miniatures still packed in a sleeve. I would drink all 10 of those before 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I would get off of work at 3:30, immediately go to the liquor store and get 10 more. I would drink all 10 of those before about 8:30 at night. And then depending on how I felt, I would get back in my vehicle. I would get 10 more, sometimes finishing all 10 of those. So before I went to rehab, I was drinking 25 to 30 Fireball miniatures every single day. And just for shits and giggles, one day I was like, I wonder how much liquor's in these Fireball miniatures. So I poured one of them out. One miniature is 2.5 shots. So 2.5 times 25 to 30. I calculated I was doing anywhere between 65 to 80 shots of Fireball whiskey every single day for over a year and a half without
Whoa.
fail. And it got to the point where I just bought a new vehicle and I'm going to the liquor store and I get my Fireball whiskey and I'm coming home and I hit something. I have no idea still to this day what I hit. I don't know if it was a parked vehicle, a street sign, one of those walls they put up for construction. I have
Mm.
no idea. I get home and I walk in and I tell my wife, I'm like, hey, I just hit something. I'm going to bed. I'm not dealing with it right now. And I go home and I go in the bedroom and I pass out. I wake up the next morning like a good alcoholic, and I'm like, "Good morning. I'm gonna go get some milk and water. Do we need anything from the store?" And she looks at me and she says, "How are you going to do that?" I was like, "In my brand new truck in the driveway." She's like, "Tim, go look at your vehicle." And I go outside, and my right passenger mirror is off the vehicle. It's not even on the vehicle anymore. My right front passenger tire is hanging off the rim, and the rim's all pushed up underneath the front of my truck.
Oof.
I only live about a block away from the liquor store, so I was able to limp home driving all squabby.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there, I'm looking at it, and she pops her head out the front door and she's like, "You have no idea what you hit last night, do you?" And I said, "No, I don't." She's like, "Tim, you could have killed yourself or killed somebody else. You can't stay here anymore. I don't want you around the girls. You got to pack your bags and leave for a while and go figure this out, but I don't want you in this house anymore." And I packed my bags. I called my buddy. I'm like, "Hey, man, can you let me come over to your house for a couple of days? Let things blow over. She'll let me back in a couple of days. Everything will be cool in a couple of days." And he's like, "Sure, man, come on over." So I go to his house and I get there and he's like, "Well, look, your wife just kicked you out. And, it's Friday night. We might as well go to the bar, man. And I'm like, you know what? That's a great idea because my wife just kicked me out, and I got a reason to drink now. I'm pissed off and blah blah blah. So we go to the liquor store and we go to the bar and we eat and we do shots and we drink and less than like 12, 16 hours later from me hitting something, I'm leaving the bar with my friend and I rear end somebody at a red light.
Mm.
And I get out of my truck and I look at him and I look at the front of my vehicle, and the front of my vehicle is all V'd in now. He had a tow hitch on the back of his truck. So
Ah, yeah.
his truck was absolutely fine. There was nothing wrong with it, but my bumper was all crushed in. And I'm looking at it. I'm like, "Are you okay, man?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm okay." I'm like, "Well, your truck's okay. And you're okay. I'm out of here." I slapped him on his back and I got my truck and I took off. I was going to jail. If the cops came, I was going to jail. I was drunk. And I get back to my buddy's house. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't stay here. I got to go be by myself, man. I gotta leave. He's like, okay, go ahead, go. I leave his house, stop at the liquor store. I get 10 more fireballs, and I go in and park my truck at one of those park and rides where people park for the day and like jump on a train and go to work.
Yeah.
And it's a big, huge parking lot. And I go and I sit there, and I don't want to hear nobody. I don't want to talk to nobody. I don't want nobody to mess with me. So I turn my phone off, and I sit there for 48 hours and drink and pass out and drink and pass out and drink and pass out and throw up and pass out and throw up and listen to sad music for 2 days, just like putting myself in the dumps of how much a piece of shit I am, how much my wife is better off without me. My kids deserve a better father. My mom deserves a better son. How I've just let everybody down, how I'm such a disappointment in life, and really putting myself through the ringer. And finally, after 2 days, I turned my phone on at 7 in the morning, or 7 after 10 in the morning, March 5th, 2021. And 2 minutes goes by and my phone rings after 2 days of having it completely off. And I look down and it says Westchester, PA. And I'm like, who the hell is this? And I pick up the phone, and on the other line, it's Brandon Novak. And he's like, "LODGEN, what the fuck are you doing?" And I said, I'm cold, I'm hungry, I'm drunk, and I'm tired. I've been sleeping in my truck for 2 days. And he says, "Good, motherfucker. That's what you need. I just got off the phone with your mom and your wife. I have a plane ticket set for you this evening at 8 o'clock. I got you in the Banyan Treatment Centers down in West Palm Beach, Florida. You're going to get on that plane. You're going to go down and get treatment. And you're going to get your life back." And I'm like, okay, man. Just kind of like agreeing with him to hang up the phone. Hang up the phone. 10 minutes goes by and my wife calls. "Where are you? Where have you been? What are you doing? I just got off the phone with Brandon. Can you please come home, take a shower, pack your bags, try to eat something, and take a nap?" Because I had about 4 hours for the plane left. And I'm like, okay, I'll come home. And I go home, I take a shower, I pack my bags. I couldn't eat and I couldn't sleep. My anxiety is through the roof now. My mind's racing. My panic set in. I'm like, oh my
Mm.
God, I got to go to rehab in Florida. How long am I going for? 30, 60, 90 days? It is a 6-month program. Like, how did I get my life to this point where I now have to go to Florida to a treatment center? And I'm just like, I can't grasp the fact that I have now to go to rehab. And I'm sitting in my room and I'm sitting on the bed and I'm just like, oh my God, I've ruined my life. I can't believe this. And one last time, my addiction peeps in my head and says, you don't have to go to rehab. We can take care of this right now.
Mm-mm.
Come with me. And my addiction grabs my hand and it walks me to the basement of my home and it throws a rope around my neck and stands me up on a bucket and tells me to end the pain. We can't do this anymore. Just step off the bucket. And I listen. I go to the basement of my home and I throw a rope around my neck and I step up on a bucket. And about a minute goes by and my wife realizes I'm not in the bedroom. So she comes looking for me, and she comes down to the basement of my home, and she sees me in the corner of the basement, hysterically crying, standing on a bucket with a rope tight around my neck. And she looks at me and she says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I can't do it. I just want the pain to stop. I don't know how. I just want it to stop." And she says, "Tim, do you know what this would do to your little girls? Please, please get down and get on that plane. Get on that plane and go to rehab. Please. Everything is going to be okay." And I guess about 30 seconds goes by, and I take the rope around my neck and I fall to the floor and I cry for about 5 minutes. And I get up, I come upstairs, and I call my friend Brandon and I say, "Hey, I got to go, man. I'm going. If I don't get on that plane tonight, my addiction's going to kill me and I don't want to die. I have to go." And all he says is, "I'm proud of you. I love you. You're about to get back everything that you've ever lost. Just do me a favor. Call me when you pass security, because I want to make sure you're getting on that plane and you're not going to catch a cab and leave the airport after you get dropped off." I'm like, "Okay, okay." So my mom comes and picks me up and takes me to the airport. I get past security and I call him. I say, "Hey, man, I got 30 minutes till the plane leaves." He's like, "I love you, man. I'm proud of you. You're about to get everything back times 10." And he just simply hangs up. As I go to sit down in the seat, waiting for them to call me to board the plane, as I sit down in the seat in the airport, I get this overwhelming feeling of hope that come over my entire body. It was a warm blanket feeling that I've never felt in my entire life. At this exact moment, all my fear left my body, my worry, my panic, my anxiety. And I hear this calm, soothing woman's voice in my head I've never heard before in my life. And it wasn't for me. And it just simply says, "Everything is going to be okay." It was the most amazing feeling that I've ever felt in my entire life. As soon as I heard that voice, I knew finally at the age of 44 years old, after suffering with this for 27 years of my life, that I was finally going to get the help I needed to save my life. And I truly believe that day at that airport, my compulsion for drinking and drugging was lifted, because I have not once had an urge to drink or drug. I have not thought about it once. I have not craved about it once. When I got to rehab, I went full addiction mode into rehab. I didn't miss a meeting. I went to extra meetings for military veterans and first responders. I shared, I volunteered, I did all the homework, I did all the journaling. I started working out with a personal trainer Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I changed my diet. And one of the biggest things that happened to me in rehab is I found faith. I didn't truly believe in a higher power. Now, I don't know what other people's higher powers are. Mine, I don't think is specifically a man named Jesus or God. I just think I believe in a higher spiritual power that looks over me and guides me to a better human being. And that's what I believe has helped me the most, is a generalization of spirituality. And it changed my life. I got out of rehab and I did 98 meetings in 90. I found a home group. And it was kind of funny because I always thought coincidences were a thing, but so many things happened to me in rehab that I cannot explain. And one of them was, this gentleman was walking around. He walked around every day, did 4 miles around the treatment facility, and he read a book every single day. 4 miles reading a book,
Wow.
and he never went up to anybody. He never told anybody what he was reading. He never bothered anybody. And one day I just, "Excuse me," I was like, "What are you reading?" He's, "I'm reading the Bible." I'm like, "Does it help you?" He goes, "It helps me." He said, "I'm not going to push it on you or anybody else." He said, "But it helps me." I said, that's really cool, man. That's awesome. And that was it. It kind of like, he never came up to me and said, oh, you need to listen to this, or God saves you, like none of that stuff. But one
Yeah.
day he did come up to me and he said, hey, what are you doing at 8 o'clock in the morning? I'm like, well, I get up at 7, I go to breakfast, and then I usually just hang out for an hour because the classes didn't start till 9. It was 9 to 5 that we did classes. And he said, well, every morning at 8 o'clock, I do a morning meeting. He said, I read a daily reflection for the day. I read a word like hope or confidence or self worth. He said, then I see a short little prayer at the end, and it kind of just helps me for the day and it gets me going before the first actual meeting starts. Would you like to come tomorrow morning? And I said, yes, I'll be there. So 8 o'clock comes the next morning and I show up. And he comes up to me and he said, thank you for coming. You're the first person that told me they were going to show up and actually came. And to me, I had lost hope. I was hopeless. I didn't believe it existed. And at that day, when he opened up that book and said hope, and he read that day, and then he read daily reflections, and then he read a short prayer, it hit home for me. It really did. And for the next 2.5 weeks, I didn't miss that morning meeting because every day was something different. And every day it hit exactly what I needed to hear, almost as it was set up for me to hear those words on those specific days. Patience, consistency, discipline, just different words that just would stick out to me. And throughout the day, the word that he read in the morning would somehow surface throughout that day in a meeting or a conversation. And I finally was like, this isn't coincidence. Like, this is literally happening for a reason for me. And it comes to the day where he's about to leave rehab, and I still have about 2 weeks left. And we're sitting around the morning meeting, and he said, I'm so glad everybody's enjoying this morning meeting. We started with 5 people, now we have 12. And I really would like this meeting to continue, and I'm going to leave this book here. And I really need somebody to continue these morning meetings. And he said, my God came to me last night and told me to choose you, Tim. And I'm looking, I'm like, what? I'm like, but I'm not like godly or anything like that. He says, I'm just a tool and I was told to choose you. He says, I see how everybody reacts around you. He says, people look up to you. They listen to you. You're a born natural leader. And I would like you to carry the message until you leave. And the day before you leave, you find somebody else to keep this book going. And I want this message to spread. So for the next 2 weeks, every morning, I did the morning meeting before the actual meeting. And the day of Easter, I went to go do the morning meeting. And I walk out of my room. And there wasn't 10 people. There wasn't 12. There wasn't 20. There was 52 people waiting for me to read that book. It was so big that they had to open up conference room A and bring us all into the building, have everybody sit down. And it wasn't a 15-minute meeting. We had an hour-long meeting for the day of Easter. I read the daily reflections. I read a word for the day. I read a prayer. We had a lady come up. She sang 3 songs, and then the counselors came and spoke some words. And at the end of that meeting, the counselors, after everybody left, the counselors came up to me. They told me to hold back. And they came up to me. They said, Tim, we have never seen anything like that in all the years that we've been working here. I just want to tell you from the bottom of our heart how great that was that you were able to bring all these patients together for one common reason, and that was hope and faith. And that stuck with me. That stuck with me, and it didn't dawn on me in that moment, but the fact that my voice carries a message, and I didn't understand that. And when I got home and I found my meeting and I did my meetings, and I chose this place called Over the Rainbow specifically because it's 10 minutes from my house. And I was like, you know what? That's the closest place. That's where I'm going. So I go there and I go and I sit down. 5 minutes goes by and it starts thundering and lightning and pouring down raining. And then all of a sudden it stops. And a lady walks in from the street and she says, "Everybody come outside and look at the rainbow over our building." And I go outside and there's specifically a rainbow over our meeting house, nowhere else. And I look up, I'm like, okay, I get it. You don't have to send me anything else. I
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah.
I'm right where I need to be.
Wow.
And I shared my story a couple of times in the meetings. And then I started following people on Instagram and Facebook, sobriety podcast, and people just giving enlightenment, encouragement, and stuff like that. And I said, you know what? Maybe I'll do a podcast because it seems kind of cool. So I messaged like 4 or 5 podcasts, and one of them got back to me. And they said, yeah, sure, we would like to have you come on. I only have about 6 months sober at this time. Yeah, come on. We'd like to hear what a newcomer would have to offer to sobriety. So I go on and I do it, and it was a fine meeting. And I think it was like 2 weeks before it airs, and then it airs. 4 days after it airs, I'm actually in my pickup truck waiting to pick up a table to take it to Brandon Novak's recovery house in Delaware. And as I'm sitting in the driveway waiting for the guy to open up the garage so I can load it in my truck, my phone rings. And it didn't say anything. It says Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio. And I pick it up. I'm like, hello. And he's like, is this Tim? And I'm like, yeah, this is Tim. Who's this? He said, this is Tony. I'm like, man, I'm sorry, buddy. I don't know too many Tonys. And he's like, I served with you in 1995 in the Marine Corps.
Mm.
And I'm like, dude, it's 2021. Like it's 21 years, 24 years later. He's like, I got your number off of Facebook. I'm like, well, what's going on? You don't sound too good. He's like, I'm not doing good at all. He said, I've been addicted to opioids for 18 years. He said, but I had to call you. He said, I listened to your podcast that you did 4 days ago, and it's given me strength and courage and hope. He said, and I had to call and tell you that I have 4 days sober after 18 years and listening to your podcast. He said, I had to call you and tell you how much I love you and how much that podcast meant to me. And hearing your story has really given me the strength to fight. And I just talked to him. I talk to him every 2 weeks. He's got coming up on 9 months sober after 18 years.
Man.
When I hung up that phone after I cried for 10 minutes, I realized that I could reach so many people just by being honest and being transparent with my journey and showing people that know how dark and deep we get into our addiction or mental illness, no matter how much we want to give up, we can recover. We can get the help that we need, and we can ultimately live the life that we've always wanted. I gave up hope, and it almost cost me my life 3 times. And I finally realized that I would have been killing the wrong Tim. I would have been killing the sick, misguided, mental ill Tim. This guy never existed. And what a shame that would have been for not only myself, but my wife and my daughters and my mom to finally see the person I was always meant to become. I used to think, why did it take me 27 years? Why me? Why me? Why did I have to go through 27 years? Somebody only maybe goes through a year or 5 years, or some people can just stop on their own. Why did I have to suffer for so long? And then once I started to read and started to go to meetings and started to work the steps of recovery, I realized that those 27 years didn't happen to me. They happened for me. They happened for me to understand how precious this gift of life that we have is, how grateful I am now to wake up each and every day and have a brand new day to live this life. The probability that you were born or I was born is 1 in 400 trillion. That's the possibilities.
Wow.
We have already won the lottery, and so many of us take it for granted each and every day. I used to be that guy who look at a glass and be like, where the rest is my drink? Where's the ice cubes? Why isn't it overflowing? But now, if I see my cup with something in it, I'm just grateful that there's something there to quench my thirst. I'm thankful that I'm alive. I'm thankful that I'm able to share my story. And I hope that whoever's listening to this today, this helps in a way that could give you the strength and courage to reach out, to not be ashamed of what's going on in your life, to not be scared to share your story, and to understand that you are loved. People need you and they want you around, and they just want you to be happy and healthy. And it can happen. Don't give up on yourself. Always believe that things can get better, because in the end, everything is going to be all right.
Tim, amazing, amazing story. Love how you wrapped it up. Honestly, like, yeah, I could see what you mentioned the last podcast you were on. No further questions. Pretty much at this point, it was a riveting story, man. Filled with all sorts of great, insight and just the honesty. I really appreciate you coming on, sharing your story. I'm rooting for you now, man. The especially now knowing everything that you've been through and that you've been able to transform yourself into such an inspiring story. That's the first most important thing, in my eyes. But then secondly, to be able to transform your body and do the physical side of it as well, and show that you can transform not only what's inside, what's outside as well. Incredibly inspiring, and that's like just right below the actual transformation of your spirit and your mental side of things. So, dude, such an inspiration. I can't thank you enough for coming on today. Thank you for coming in, being so vulnerable, and sharing your story.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, man. I thank people like you who have podcasts to allow people like me to come on and share my story, to reach the masses of people. Without guys like you and women who do podcasts, so many people would not know that they're not alone. And there's others out there, and we know your pain. We've been there and we're here to help.
Absolutely. Speaking of, if anybody wants to reach out to you, I'll have it in the show notes, but I'll give you the opportunity. Where can we find you online, Tim?
I'm mainly on Instagram at LODGEN, LODGEN, and that's where I post all my podcasts, all my fitness transformation, my goals, and hopefully I inspire somebody to give me a call. My messages are open. If anybody needs any help, if they have any questions, if they're going through it, you can message me. I message you back. I answer, and I try to help as many people as I can.
Tim, I love it. Thank you again so much for coming on, and I'm gonna be following you. I'm totally rooting for you, dude. All the best in November and well and beyond. And we're gonna have you back on at some point, and then we'll do a check in with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Anytime. Thanks, Tim.